All right. So, all right. So the inflation rate of Hex is 3.69%, right? Like we're just looking at this not from penalties and stuff like that. We're just looking at an inflation rate, right? Now, where does all that inflation like go? To the shareholders, right? Or to the T shareholder, the shareholders, right? Well, we know over time that there will be less and less shares, right? We can all say yes to that. Eventually, there has to be a point where there's less and less shares, but there's more and more Hex because remember, it inflates up, right? Hex inflates up, but there's less and less shares. So the payout per T share eventually, I'm not sure when, I'm not making a claim that it's this year, next year, the year after, but like eventually the payout rate per T share is going to just skyrocket just based off of inflation. And then you have the end stake penalties that me and the gentleman before were talking about, where we think that like somebody who staked 1,000,000 Hex for 15 years, they're going to look and be like, I don't think like a lot of the big whales are going to be playing that. I think a lot of smaller people would go and just go, oh, $50 million, I have to run away right now. And then they dump. And then all of that interest goes to the shareholders too. So it's just like eventually there will be a point where owning a T share is going to pay out like sick amounts of Hex. Like we're talking, it could eventually pay out 20, 30, 50 Hex per T share per day. And like the thing is we don't, if we're starting to talk moon math, Hex is successful, you know, $50, $100 Hex. Well, each of those T shares, man, those things are going to pay out some really sick gains at some point. I mean, they already pay out pretty good anyway, but like there's gonna be a point where they pay out just gross amounts of money, and people are going to want that yield. Yup. I really like Hex.
They're not really gonna pay more though. Hex like units, it's just Hex will be worth more.
Well, you'll get more payouts over time. Like I'm not sure like this T share rate. Like right now it's paying out 5.7 Hex per day, but eventually it will start shooting up. And then, you know, we do have future price appreciation on top of that is what I meant.
I think it'll be less, but unless people leave, then you'll get more shares.
Or it's a time thing though. Like shares are increasing at a rate of like 20 to 25% a year. And eventually there won't be enough like Hex to keep up with the amount of shares. And there will be less shares, but there'll be more Hex. Each share will eventually start paying out more Hex.
No, I don't think you can make that claim. So the amount of Hex the T-share is paying depends of number of T-shares. So the people staking, if you have more people staking, you have more T-shares. Less people staking, less T-shares.
Right. But like if with the way that shares are increasing, that like it just has to happen. It literally just has to happen. Like I'm not saying it's happening this year, next year, or the year after, but like with this kind of rate that we're going, there has to be a point where the share, like there are just less shares, right? At the end of the day, there will be a point where like there are less shares, but there's more Hex out there because it's based on the number and it keeps inflating. So there will be a point where shares start to pay out more. There will be.
Why do you say there will be less T-shares?
That depends on like people end staking, right? But like there's tons of people doing like monthly, quarterly stakes, and every time they do that, they ratchet up the share price. So if people keep doing that all the time, it's probably going to get worse with adoption, I'm assuming.
Well, I agree that they will get more expensive with time in terms of X. So, but I don't see why we have to have less T-shirts. I think it's desirable. It's desirable
because the share price keeps going up, and the share price is going up way faster than the inflation rate of Hex. It is. It's not like, oh, like, no,
It
literally
is
the share price is going up at like a rate of like 20 or 25% a year, sometimes more, right? But like if that stays the same, like, and it looks like, why wouldn't it? Like, right? Like people end staking, ratcheting up the price. That's what the system was designed to do. Eventually, you have to have less shares over time. Over
think
time,
that
even with adoption. Just everyone else gets a smaller piece of the pie. Like it,
I think that the
I'm
design
very
is
sure.
to keep the number of T-shares stable. So there's inflation, there's more X, but we have
Yeah.
the same number of T-shares going around.
I think, like, I understand what you're saying, but like if you, my buddy is like a calculus like legend, and this is where I learned it, and it's just like, if you put the two on a chart, there's eventually an inflection point where there's not enough hex to keep producing the same amount of shares. So just slowly over time, there will be less and less shares, but there's more and more hex from inflation, right? And if there's more and more hex from inflation, and all the inflation goes to the shareholders, but we just learned that the share price is going up so much, that means that each share is going to start paying out more hex.
Again, I think that's speculation.
All right.
Yeah, there's only a certain amount though, and if everybody's staked, you can't get more hex.
If you have hex and you end your stake and fully restake that amount, you can get the same number of T shares.
No, you can't.
You can't. It'll be slightly less.
That's the system designed not to. As soon as you end stake, the system readjusts the share price so that you can't get the same amount of shares unless you stake longer or add more.
No, because the share price is not readjusted for every single person that end stakes. It's only if you're setting the share price, which means no one else has a higher ROI than you.
What timeline are you basing that off though? Because the cost to get a T-share is constantly going up. So wherever you bought your T-shares at used to be cheaper. So now you'd have to pay more.
Yeah, but when you're minting, you also get more hex. So I've done this multiple times. You can end stake, and if your stake comes up, you can just roll that stake, and you can wind up with the same amount of T-shares because of the behavior of the people that are end staking. You can actually get just as many as long as you keep restaking your full stake.
Are you sure it's the same amount, even down to the exact M share?
Yeah, no, but what we're talking about is the same value amount. You're talking about using the profits you've made, like off the interest and the early end stakers. So if you take the same value that you bought them at with the same dollar on a year ago, for example, and then you try to put that same dollar amount back in, you're not going to get the same amount of T-shares.
All I'm saying is if you guys are saying that I'm wrong, that's fine. But like, if you think there will only ever be like 11 million or more forever, and there will never be a point where there is even 10 million shares total, I think you're wrong. And if I am right, and just even in the smallest case, right? Like, let's say that eventually, like, I'm right, and then there are only 10 million shares. Well, there's more hex being printed.
No, there's only 3.69. It doesn't change.
Yeah, I know, but you keep inflating off the current supply. So, and it keeps getting a little bit bigger. So there's always more hex. But then and all of that inflation is paid only to the holders, the shareholders. But if there are less shareholders, you can only come to the conclusion that each hex or T-share will start paying out more hex per day at some point.
Yeah, but there's gonna be more shareholders.
Yeah, the number on Mike's side, the only difference is that we may have an increased amount of hex that actually gets staked, because for Mike's argument,
OA.
What happens if the OA decides to stake? I mean, shit, that's an awful lot of T-shares.
So the T-shares, there's a maximum amount of T-shares, right? It's 10.8 million, but the hex is keeping inflating, and that will always make the T-shares more expensive, but the increase in price of the hex shares are very much faster, so you always need more hex to buy the T-shares, and when people unstake, the new hex price as a T-share price will calculate it. So actually, like you said, you don't get the same amount because the price performance of the T-shares is more faster than the hex. Is that correct? Did I understand that correct?
Yes.
Very nice. Very nicely said. Yeah.
Okay, because one thing was confusing for me from Hodl Dog on YouTube because I still think the T-shares is 10.8 million, but he made some calculation where the hex shares were actually more. But I thought
You can have more. That's the only thing that I like. If the OA staked
Yeah.
all its coins right now, there would be way more shares. But like all I'm saying is it, in a hunt. Okay, like for example, my statement isn't tomorrow. I'm saying, if you told me that there is no possible way, even in 100 years, that the payout rate per T-share can eventually skyrocket, you are wrong.
Can you explain how the
more shares.
T-shares are increasing? I thought it's capped by a maximum amount, the T-shares.
No,
Or
it's
the
not
heavy
capped.
shares. It's
I
not
think
capped.
there's like a maximum possible that can be like but it's like a vanity metric kind of thing. But like there could be more than 10.8. I think there's
Okay,
you can go to
okay.
Hex Daily Stats and look at all the numbers.
So there's a max amount of T-shares, you're saying?
I guess there's like a theoretical cap. You know, if
Right.
every single coin was staked for the maximum amount, but it's a vanity metric. It's like, do you really even need to know what that number is? Because that's not going to happen.
No,
You know?
10.8. So there's not going to be any more. That's why it goes up, because the T-shares go away.
It depends on like behavior of like everybody, right?
Oh.
So like all these numbers can change, and that's why I didn't say in 5 years the payout rate's going to increase, right? Because you can't determine what people are going to do, but eventually there has to be a point where the shares start paying out more hex. It's just going to happen, whether it's tomorrow or whether that's 100 years from now. And that's the value of shares in my eyes.
So when
The
you say
longer you
shares,
hold,
like,
the more
are you
yield you earn.
shares? You mean hexes, right?
I'm not sure what you're
We-
asking. Sorry.
Oh, because we keep the amount of hexes keeps going up.
Right.
When we remint them. Okay, and then you're saying shares. Are you talking T-shares when you say shares?
Yeah, T-shares. Or,
Okay.
Yeah, it's just shares just for.
Mike, I think I know what you mean, because the inflation, the minted X will be larger in the future, because the 3.69% of a larger volume is more, and if the T-shares are the same, each one will receive more X, right? That's
Exactly.
your reasoning.
But at a bare minimum, yes, at a bare minimum.
They will pay out more, but they will be more expensive.
Yeah, but they'll be so astronomically more expensive. We don't know. Like, I mean, look at what the share price has done just like this year. What was it, like $100, and now we're at $8,000 or something, $9,000. I don't even know what it is today. Right? It's just going
But
to get
that's
even
because-
more nutty.
But that's because price is appreciating. But maybe in the future, the price
And
of
it
X
costs
will
more
be more
hex.
stable.
It costs more hex too.
Yeah, that too. But
Yeah, the majority of share price increase came from the price appreciation.
Some guy had a question about the T-shirts, and I also saying, so the thing is, you have to realize also, all people who will understand, they will never ever sell their principal. So the circulating supply will drastically also decrease. Yeah. And at some point when the liquidity is very low, yeah, I mean, it's still early, so it's pre-viral and it still can go parabolic, really parabolic.
what do you mean, Arno? What are you on about the liquid? No one will sell the
I mean the hex, the liquidity from hex. I mean, also of course you have the inflation, but more and more people participating in this ecosystem. it gets much more rare, you know, or scarce, how you say that. The hex the hex shares price is always more increasing, so you always need more and more hex to get those T-shares, because the number of T-share matters that will mint your hex, right? So
Yeah, sure.
yeah, that's, I think, yeah.
Does anyone know how much it started at at the beginning of Hex, like one T-share?
Or a year ago, it was like 30, 40 bucks. Just read
It
that.
was 60 cents and it started at 10,000 per T-share, if I'm not mistaken. 60 cents a T-share.
It was cheap. But the whole theory of keeping your T-shares intact is really important indeed. But when you're looking at the price appreciation over time, reality sort of tells you that maybe it's smart to, you know, do some big stakes and just sort of play outside of that theory of trying to keep as much T-shares as you can. So there's all sorts of game theory in making your T-shares work for you. My point is that there's going to be a lot of money if you stake out long. You're going to have a lot of wiggle room. I like to look at it like short term, midterm, long term, and then you just play through those different sections and have a few big ones long and a few big ones medium and a few big ones short, and just balance it all out. You're going to be more than fine.
As someone with a proper staking ladder, I totally agree.
I totally agree. And I would even add to that it's nice to have some liquid as well.
Yeah, always stock up on some dry powder.
Francisco, like, because you asked before me with the scarcity, and this is a thing, people want a huge amount of T-shares or shares, like, and so they tend to stake their hex longer. And when people buying huge amount of hex and staking it longer, it reduces dramatically the circulating supply, although you have the inflation, but the inflation is always kept in 3.69%. So the new minting hex, yeah, it's still less hex in circulation, because more and more people will understand how hex works, and they pretty much say, you see that with millionaires out there, they are staking like 15 years. It's insane.
Yes, but you have to see what's actually happening. I mean, that behavior, I see that. I see new people coming,
Yeah.
buying, and staking for a long time. I did that myself. But that's not the whole thing that's going on with X. You know, you look at the numbers, and yeah, it's there.
I think these big accounts that are going way out are thinking about upholding the value. It's the value proposition into the future that they're holding on to, and it's good for their bags. It's good for everyone's bags, and they can afford to do it.
And I just want to make an argument here. Let's say that any one of, like, you know, let's say that Hex does something silly and then one of your stakes is worth $50 million. What? Are you going to dump every single dollar of that to go get dollars from the US government? Like every single one? Or are you just going to maybe live off the interest and maybe buy what you need?
It wouldn't also be smart to dump everything on one in once. You would get actually less than you think from that.
Yeah, there's got to be some sort of etiquette.
Yes, you cannot do that.
If you have a high liquid and you're gonna dump that price down, well, you're gonna pay the consequences of the dump. You know, that's the price you're gonna get.
Well, I think with this community, we're really educating people on how to responsibly take out their hex gains. I think that's really like one of the best features of this crypto is it's such a tight-knit community of smart investors playing it through, looking out and realizing that, you know, all the newcomers are part of the, you know, the ecosystem now, and we're all in it. And I think that's one of the best things about this community. So
Yeah, even
Yeah,
even like smart investors that even fund the company and they just want to move on to a new company, and they want to sell all their stocks. They always have some percentages left there just to grow. You know, there's like you see all these headlines, people selling all of their big stocks in a company because they are moving on to another project. It's always, they never say that they actually he has 3.5% left in the stock. He didn't sell all of it. So like no one that has good brains will sell everything at once. It's just silly. You just don't know finance if you do that.
I'll be real, like after you hit like a millionaire status, what's your next goal in life? Add another digit, right? All right. So if you want to do that, what would you rather do? Go buy stocks? Like, you know, real estate usually doesn't double like every like couple months like Hex does. Why don't you just stake a little longer? You only need so much money to live. Hex is a money dick game. That's all it is. It is a big money dick game. And trustless yield. God damn. So fucking good. It's too goddamn good.